long as you keep your head to the sky.
We back. I missed y'all.
Goody.
We haven't done that in a while.
That was the first official one of the season. Felt
right? Yo, I legitimately missed y'all. I know I've been real mushy about that lately via text.
So mushy, y'all.
But I legit have missed this experience with you all every week. I really have. All of it.
We miss you too, baby.
Got one thug tear out of me.
One whole thug tear. We are literally back in season 3. Can you believe it? It's been officially a year. One whole year that we've been rocking and writing and recording and affirming and loving on y'all and loving on ourselves and loving on each other. And yeah, it's been a roller coaster. My gosh. It's been good. It's been not so good sometimes. It's been fun. It's been not so fun sometimes. But I know personally, I feel like I've learned a ton about myself, about my co-hosts. Had to dig deep sometimes, but we here. We're here and it's great.
Yes, it sounds like you are referencing life.
Yeah, baby.
Life is a haze.
Oh my God. What? Yes. I've never heard that put that way, but I can agree with that.
No, that is very factual. I mean, so like, what y'all been up to? What's going on? We ain't been back online in a minute.
Well, let's see. Where do we begin? So we left off in April, mid-April, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, where do we start? I got a new job.
Hey.
Got a new job. Right? Have moved. I'm back home in North Carolina. So that's been good. Y'all can't see her, but she's throwing up gang signs in the background.
Rough Raleigh.
The Rough Raleigh sign. It's been good. So before I was at Hampton University, I was in Virginia. Now I'm at the University of North Carolina, which is so totally different. And it is so amazing. So specifically, I'm working with minority athletes as their mental health provider at this bomb-ass D1 school with all these elite athletes and programs. And man, it's been great. Like, I don't have another more sophisticated word. It's just been great. I'm loving it.
We're so excited for you. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's
been
good.
A huge deal. She's being a little bit more modest and humble with it, but what's all right. We'll let her rock. We're so proud of you, and it's major things on the way.
Thank you. It's been good being home too. Being home in North Carolina. I did a lot of driving back and forth between Virginia and here every other weekend, it feels like. And so I was just thinking about, like, I'm a big traveler. I have not traveled since I've been home. Like, I haven't left. And it feels like maybe this is where I needed to be anyway. So yeah, it's been cool. I get to see my niece like 2-3 times a week.
Cute self.
I know, she getting so big. Oh gosh, they just get so
big. What about you?
Fast.
What you got going on?
Honestly, it's just been audition crazy. My industry is still not fully open yet, but the opportunities are definitely like rolling in. So it's been great, but also overwhelming trying to, do 5-6 self-tapes or sometimes in person in a week, and remember to eat and keep my apartment clean and take time for myself and all those things. So, but I'm blessed. I'm glad. I'm prayerful that something is going to hit and stick. Because it's been tough. I'm going to be honest, like we always are on this podcast. It's been tough. I just got a part-time job that I'm going to start soon. And the goal is that I'm not going to be there long. I'm saying that out loud, that I'm going to do some training next week, do a couple of shifts, and then my agent is going to call and say, baby, going to get that job. You're not even 2 weeks. Sorry, y'all, I got to go. So that's the prayer. But it's just been a transformative continuous part of the year. And now we're moving on 2 years of this like living in uncertainty a little bit. And I'm sure we'll tap into that more, in this episode.
Baby out here working,
Definitely.
auditioning again. I remember like, gosh, one of our first episodes, we talked about how that was all shut down and just the space you were in that time and how much things have changed for all of us really in the last year. It's kind of crazy.
Absolutely.
So I know I'm overjoyed to hear that you're auditioning again. And I know it makes things feel crazy because it's so busy all over again, but it's busy in the best way. You're doing what you love to do, and when I literally talk to my friends about Danny. I'm like, when I think of people who are like living their dreams and like really going after, I'd be like, Danny, out here.
Thank you.
On Broadway.
On the way. And I will
On the
personally
way.
hold you accountable to that. You giving somebody a 2 weeks notice in the near future. So we're just gonna go ahead and keep the bag running up with these good old auditions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to be back front row, opening nights again. Been missing some of that. Very excited for you, girl.
What about you, Miss Christopher?
Right.
Girl, right now is the ghetto. It is the ghetto. I mean, it's September always brings beginning of a new school year, which is always a very, very busy time in the education world. And so it's been nonstop really for the last couple of weeks, just trying to make sure we get our staff in, trying to make sure that people are trained up, feel supported, have what they need to do their job well. And it's not easy every day. So been really pouring a lot into just trying to get all of our schools to a good place so they can start and welcome our scholars back, and looking forward to that. So on the professional side, it's just busy. On the personal side, my son's still on 10,000, just a ball of amazing, contagious, positive energy. And I'm very thankful for that. Mm-hmm. And just looking forward to, getting him up into his first, I guess, real year of pre-K, I think it is. Mm-hmm. Like last year, he was 2.5. This year, he's like 3.5, and he's going, big boy school. I might even get him a book bag. We'll see. But just, life is lifing, and, relationships, both personal, professional, just blossoming and just trying to keep all the pieces together while also saving some space for myself. And similar to Sid, I love traveling. And so I'm excited to finally get back on road a little bit, currently recording out of LA, and just excited to get back out and just experience more of the world, even though it's like a post-pandemic and interestingly different in what I would call some strange ways, but there's still a lot of world to explore. So we out here safely with masks on.
Hello, because still in a whole pandemic.
And as we said in last season, Vaxiana's only. So we're still in that space.
Okay.
Vaxiana's only.
Unscripted. What's been the best thing that has happened to you since we last recorded together?
Oh, for me, it's work. I got a work one.
Okay.
I hired a director of leadership development. I've had this dream of developing robust leadership development programming at work to really help us think about pipeline. And I found a fire person. She started early August, has been rocking and rolling. And it brings me joy every time I see an email with her name on it. Every time somebody is asking a question about the program, there's real structure. And I remember when she started, I was like, your job is to legitimately make me look bad. And I would appreciate it if you really leaned into that and made me look really bad. And I think she's doing a phenomenal job. And it's been a godsend, to be frank. So that's my biggest accomplishment since last April. I dreamed it up, wrote the JD, found the person, and she's killing it.
Love to hear that. Especially when work everywhere else in every other regard right now is ghetto as hell.
Dumpster fire is my favorite phrase right now.
And she's rocking it. And she's somebody that you found and you interviewed and you developed that position. So go, sis.
Whew, I feel like an adult.
You are a grown ass adult, actually. Might be the grownest that I know, to be honest. I'm trying to think. I kind of have two. So I'm gonna say them quickly. The first one would be more time to deal with grief. I just realized in my therapy that I have not processed a lot of grief, and grief comes in, all kinds of different forms. So just more time to deal with that is probably the best thing. It's very hard. It's very painful, but having more time to like look at myself and ask why as many times as possible has been a journey. The second one will be I got to do a quick gig. I can't really talk about it that much because I don't know how, when, whatever that's going to come out, but just having the opportunity to film something during this time and it be filmed on my college campus, it kind of was a full circle, not kind of, it was and is a full circle moment. And I'm prayerful that it comes out and that I'm able to share it with the world.
Hey,
Claiming that it's coming
yes.
out. We're about to have a bomb watch party. When
Right?
it come out, premiere, world premiere. It's gonna be great. So
That's
excited.
my friend Danielle.
Can't wait.
Screaming at the TV.
In the room with her. Yes.
Right. So actually, Danny, we have had some similar experiences since April. So part of this podcast, we focus and we hone in on transparency. And so why stop now, right? I ain't gonna tell you all my little business, but I'm gonna spill a couple beans. And one of those beans is I am working through some grief and loss as well. My relationship ended around February, right? And so Danny and Emmy know because they were right there kind of with me in the thick of it. Like, girlfriend was going through it. You hear me? Like, not okay. Not okay. No one ever gets in relationships thinking that it will end or wanting it to end. And sometimes it's very hard to come to grips with the ending of a relationship. And so I have been very diligent and intentional about processing and working through that grief as well, Danny. And it's so funny, I don't know if you do this, but I know one thing I do is stay busy as hell so that I don't have to think about shit, don't have to deal with shit. And part of that busyness for me has always been the back and forth between Raleigh and Virginia. And so when I tell you, I've had time to just sit my ass down, okay? And when you leave, so y'all know I'm a veteran, so I get VA care. When you leave one state, you have to transition your therapist and all your care and stuff. So I got a new therapist too, Black female therapist.
Yes.
It's been great. So she has really been pushing me. She has really been encouraging me to continue to do the work. It feels really good to be able to just talk freely without having to explain certain nuances that come with the culture. You know what I mean? So that's been really good. But I think that's probably something that I'm most proud of too, is just being very intentional about taking that time to myself and letting myself feel whatever comes up, whether that is I hate this month right now, or I kind of just want to be back with him right now, or I'm chilling right now. It's a good feeling. I'm doing good. So whatever that is, I just kind of sat in that and kind of wrote it out, felt it out. I had me a Cranes in the Sky season, and that's okay. We here now, but I feel really good. I'm feeling really, really good. I feel healthy. I feel grounded. So that just goes to show, I love to be transparent around stuff like that, because I think sometimes people think people who do this work don't experience shit. And I'm like, nah. I was almost decrepit. Okay. Almost not functioning.
Grief can be really debilitating. And I think we often think that grief is only someone dying. We don't talk about the grief of the loss of a routine, the loss of comfort, the loss of so many things. So I'm proud of you, and I'm glad that you are still working through that. And, to be completely honest, it doesn't just go away. Even in the moments that we feel good, sometimes there's the triggers and those things. So I think in everything we've all shared, a big part is being able to digest, feel, plan ahead, reflect, and grow. And it makes me think about inner child and inner child work and how this plays out into our real lives, which is our topic for today, a dose of inner child wounds. And so I want to ask you directly, as our resident subject matter expert,
Okay.
What is the inner child?
So I know like right now, inner child work is a very buzzwordy kind of topic, right? Like you're hearing it everywhere and everybody's talking about, oh, my inner child, oh, my inner child. And I think that's beautiful. Like I am really excited that we're all really tapping into doing the inner work. So let's take it back. Inner child was actually an archetype that was created by a very famous psychologist. His name is Carl Jung, right? And his concept was that we all have this very childlike aspect within our unconscious mind. Sometimes we can see it as like a sub-personality or a side character that as adults comes to the surface, comes to the front when we are put in positions to face certain things that, here's another keyword, that trigger us from things that we have experienced dealing with in our past, right? So the inner child essentially reflects our actual child in space where we were both our negative selves and our positive selves, our positive aspects and our negative aspects. So when you think about things like innocence, creativity, joy, those are all very childlike things that sometimes we lose sight of as adults, right? Like when's the last time you ran around and played hide and seek? You know, I used to love hide and seek. That was my jam. So running around and doing things like that bring you Emmy's cracking up right now. I wish y'all could see these podcasts because Emmy's face in this laughter. Go ahead.
Because when you said when was the last time you played hide and seek, my mind instantly went to the not child version of hide and seek.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went like this.
Exactly.
Hide and go get it.
And I was like this, hide and go freak.
I actually never played hide and go get it. Can you believe that? I actually never did.
Violent.
You say I'm
well,
wild.
now you are an adult and you should play hide and freak and hide and go get it and hide and go whatever.
Hide and freak. I'm gonna have to add hide and freak to my gang list. That sounds like something I might enjoy. Okay. But yeah, so in addition to the very innocent childlike parts of ourselves, there's also this part of our inner child that expresses things like feeling hurt, feeling neglected, feeling abandoned, sometimes not being able to have space to be creative as a child or to express our emotions as a child. And I think all of these things, we're going to jump into it a little bit more, but I think all of these things are so subconscious that unless you are intentionally mindful of it and are really diving into it to do the work, sometimes our initial reactions to things feel knee-jerk when in actuality, it's our inner child crying out. And so that's just kind of a brief little synopsis on what the inner child is, but you'll hear it. I mean, it's very trendy right now, but it's actually real work to be done connected to it.
I think like when you name, like sometimes it feels like a knee-jerk reaction. I think the other part of it from my own experience and just like also just champion friends, et cetera, is that it also like feels very like visceral. And you sometimes can't really like, you don't have the language to understand why this thing is triggering you in a way that it is, but you know, you're having a real reaction to it. And I think sometimes, you know, without people in your life that can help you kind of like ask the right questions, I think questioning is a big part of trying to unpack your inner child wounds.
Yeah.
Like, that can be a big part of, you know, you can sometimes continue having these like really visceral reactions or these really strong and like sharp reactions that can sometimes either cause you pain or cause pain and harm to those that you love and care about. And so I think that like also is like, and I think a lot of that is rooted in, you know, when you're a child, you're able to feel very freely and your emotions are very strong. And I think that to me, like, you know, non-professional opinion, but I think that's a part of like why sometimes you have such a strong reaction to it, because if you're really connected back to your inner child, you're sometimes having those same emotional, visceral reactions that you would when it happened to you when you were a child.
Very unbridled.
Just
unbridled before we learn things like what it feels like to be judged for emotions and feelings, right? Like that very innocent, natural, again, the word that comes to mind is unbridled feelings that come up.
I was thinking even the word triggers lately, it kind of comes up with a negative connotation. And I was actually talking to my friend and she made a really good point that triggers are like key point indicators. They're not some like negative thing that you should try to be like, I'm triggered by that, so I'm not going to do this anymore. It's like, no, let's pay attention to this trigger and let's get to that doesn't mean it's going to necessarily change. You might still have that visceral reaction, but maybe there's now, a tool set, or there's a way for you to ask yourself some more questions to figure out why these things are, doing what they're doing to you. So I agree. I know you were saying a non-expert opinion, Emily, but I definitely feel that myself when I feel so overwhelmed with sadness. I kind of feel ashamed of it sometimes. Like, I'm so sad. I don't even know how to explain why I'm so sad. So I don't want to say anything to anyone else. But then, like, I feel like a child again. I feel this level of innocence, but then I also feel like I'm not allowed to feel this level of innocence anymore because no one cares. Work harder. That's what you're told throughout your life, or for many people, in your innocence is snatched away from you. So that joy and that peace that you so freely had, you no longer carry that anymore. So those are my thoughts on trigger being kind of aligned with the inner child being this trendy word right now.
I think when I think of triggers, I think of information.
Yeah.
Triggers are simply information into what things that we still have not healed from. That's literally, if you have this knee-jerk or unbridled reaction or very childlike reaction to whatever that external stimuli is or that trigger is, that's key indicator that there's work to be done around whatever is unhealed inside of you. And so, the question I get a lot when we talk about inner child wounds is, how do they happen? Like, what happens to us that causes us to develop these inner child wounds? And so, very simply put, I think most often inner child wounds happen from trauma or neglect. And so when I say two words, I think immediately what comes to mind for most people are these very extreme, polarized versions of trauma and of neglect, right? Like, people automatically go to the very physically abusive or emotionally abusive parent, or the parent that was a drug addict, or the parent that was in prison, or, the person that abandoned their children. So instead, I try to teach people to think of trauma and neglect as existing on a spectrum. I always say trauma is in the eye of the beholder, meaning what might feel traumatic to me might not feel traumatic to you, and vice versa. So a lot of times inner child wounds will happen when we learn as children, again, to suppress certain feelings and emotions in order to still have our needs met, in order to still feel loved, in order to still feel valued. We learn to either suppress or heighten, in some cases, parts of ourselves in order to still have those needs met. And when I say needs, I'm talking like Maslow, right? Like food, shelter, water, clothes, connection, companionship, love, all of those things. If those needs are not being met, now as an adult, we resort to maladaptive behaviors from our inner child crying out.
Yeah.
So examples of that might be like, if you were only offered attention as a child when you were being, I'm doing air quotes, good, right? You might find that your inner child holds rebellion or sadness or anger, or very often you'll see like adults become people pleasers, right? That's a very common one. People afraid to say no, people putting their own desires and needs on the back burner to please others. This idea of like being good enough to receive love, being good enough to receive affection as children lends itself to being people pleasers as an adult.
I wonder how much of inner child also comes with like, not just the things that were like on the spectrum of trauma, but like the things that just weren't explained to you, that somebody didn't take the time to really talk to you about. Like, so I think that connects back to the like a neglect experience, or connects back to
abandonment.
I think it connects to many things, but I'm also thinking about like, think about sometimes the trauma that folks have when they had the like ideal upbringing, where, you had the 2-parent household with all the things and all the bells and whistles. And, maybe a part of like an inner child wound could be, you never saw your parents argue. And so to an extent, like, you just don't necessarily even know how to deal with it.
That's good. Yeah.
And I wonder like what place that comes into, or where that comes into play when we're talking about inner child wounds, because I think sometimes it's not just me being like triggered by something that happened to me in my past, but also me being confused or confounded by things I never experienced. Yeah. And I was sheltered from. And so then when they happen when I'm an adult, it's like, we just talk about these things.
Right. Like what? Grown-ups argue, fight.
Like, why do you, or like other things, like, certain aspects of just being in a relationship as an adult, where it's like, oh, you're not just gonna like, I have to talk to you about this stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Whether it's like picking your socks up when you come in the door, or just like, or like having deep conversations about like sex and money and like disagreements and strategies. Yeah, like how do you, I think there's some aspects, and not, maybe it's not inner child wounds, but I think there's some pieces of like, when you are sheltered from certain things because of maybe like what could be deemed as the socially ideal upbringing, how that might play into your inability to deal with stuff that's really rooted in stuff that happened in your childhood that you never had experience doing. And so how that can how you decide to work on it.
Yeah.
Could be interesting as well.
I definitely think that I feel like, personally speaking, I grew up in what would be outwardly viewed as the ideal upbringing, right? And so when you have this notion of like, this is what is ideal, I think that really creates a level of perfectionism, right? And so we strive to be in this relationship that looks perfect, especially from the outside, even though the fucking floor is falling in from the inside, right? Or the ceiling is caving in, but outwardly it looks good. Or we beat ourselves up so badly when we're doing good work or good enough work because it's not perfect. And so not really having the information as a child, or the discussions as a child to understand some of those things, definitely still, like you said, Em, it still shows up as adults, because our childlike selves never learned things like conflict resolution, never learned things like how to have a difficult conversation about certain things. And I genuinely think like our parents really tried to protect us from certain things, shield us from certain things. Personally speaking, I think I've seen my parents argue 1.5 times in my entire life. Right? Not to say that they didn't argue. I know they did, but they shielded my brothers and I from that. And so on the flip side, like you're saying, I think that as an adult, I really had to like learn sometimes conflict is unavoidable. Sometimes we have to talk some stuff out. So no, I 100% agree with that. It also teaches us to hide the things about ourselves that we don't necessarily like, or that we feel parents, teachers, other adults at that point in time didn't like. Things like not feeling like it's okay to have your own opinions on things, or speaking up for yourself. I know like in Black families, advocating for yourself after they done already told you what's what.
Especially if they told you no.
Especially if they told you no. Nah. I don't know. Danny, have you had any experiences around that? Like, I know you and your mom are thick as thieves, right? But Si and Vicky, if the answer was no, it was no. There was no advocacy after that.
Yeah, well, I think for me, I have, I guess, an interesting perspective on all of it, being that I grew up in the ideal, perfect 2-family home when I was living in Maryland. And I was this happy child, to the point that even now in some of my therapy, I can't even remember certain things from my childhood because I suppressed so much, because I actually wasn't happy. My parents were miserable together and they fought like cats and dogs all day, all the time. But I grew up in that. I mean, we were living in Bowie, Maryland. If people who are listening know, PG County is like, Black people are doing well. They're still doing very well in that, in parts of that area. And so I grew up seeing Black wealth, and so we went from that to my parents separating, divorcing. Now my mom goes bankrupt from her company. And now we go from, her having Versace and bottles of Mo and Dom at dinner all the time to us now moving to North Carolina, living with family members. And my mom can't even get McDonald's for me, can't get a job because the business that she started in DC, she started it without a degree. So now she's in North Carolina. And they're like, you don't have a degree? You can't. She had to work at Bed Bath & Beyond. When I tell you, my mom was on Oprah for Millionaires Under 40, now in North Carolina, having to clean toilets at Bed Bath & Beyond. And not that that's beneath her, but it was just such a shift. So then I go to a single mom where all I knew was a lot of my dad. My mom was really busy. So my dad was, getting up, cooking breakfast and all that. And the love that my dad gave, I thought was good love, but it was very, very, very strict and hard and painful love. So for me, love always came across as hard. And it wasn't until I moved away. I think I always say moving to North Carolina was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I became my own person, which we all do when we grow up. But I also learned to be free. I wasn't free as a kid. It was stay in a child's place. My dad was raised in 1949 in Mahalia, Texas, where he didn't go to school with white people until he went to college, and he was taught that they were smarter and that they were inferior. Just in that time, he was denied of all the pleasures and all the things that he wanted to do with his life, because this is what you have to do. And so in my parenting, I'm often triggered by those videos when they're like, if Sam had 5 apples and such takes 2 away, how many? Because I mean, that stand over you childhood, that was what I experienced. I experienced borderline abuse. I mean, I haven't really started calling it abuse until recently, but it was a lot of emotional, mental, sometimes physical abuse in that aspect. And so even now as an adult, sometimes I'm not used to things that come with ease. I always think everyone now talks about rest, being, something that we all deserve and we all need. I have trouble with it, why this pandemic has been so hard for me, because I've been taught you have to work so hard. The things aren't supposed to fall into your lap. Or, love is not supposed to be easy. You have to fight for, you have to this. So I'll generally fight harder for love or for a job or a position, so much harder than the things that fall into my lap. And I'm trying now to unlearn that behavior, so that, for example, the filming process that I spoke about, I didn't even audition for it. It was an email that someone randomly sent me, and I thought it was a scam, and here I am on this big set, this huge network that I've been watching since I came out of my mom's vagina. And I'm just like, wow, I didn't have to do anything for this, And so I have to remind myself, I even use that affirmation. I pray for a life of ease, God, I welcome a life of ease, a love of ease, abundance that comes with ease. Money comes to me effortlessly. Joy comes to me effortlessly. And so that is like, when we speak about, just how the inner child wounds happen, it just comes from so many different things all over the place. But I can absolutely identify with both spectrums of, I struggle with that perfectionist, stuff, because I saw that the perfect, beautiful Black couple, both fine as hell, money in this big old house. And then I saw us like struggling, and my mom working 2 jobs while going back to school. And then my father now being absent in my life. And what that did to me, and how, like I said, I'm having to now try to remember, like, I can't remember when we did this. My mom would say, remember when you was in dance class and you did that thing and you fell? And I'm like, no, I don't remember that. And it's really small things. And she's like, you don't remember? And she'll she's not thinking anything of it. And then I come back home and I'm like, I really don't remember that dance class. I don't remember that teacher. I don't remember any of these things from Maryland. I remember a lot of the things that I shouldn't remember, that I don't want to remember, but I don't remember those happy moments. And as happy as everyone wants to say little Danielle was, I clearly wasn't.
Right.
Anyway.
It's like it was all clouded by the other stuff that was going on between mom and dad, that has become top of mind for you. When you think back about childhood memories, you're not thinking about Happy Danielle falling and dancing. You think about mom and dad fighting like cats and dogs all day, every day.
Yeah, or the abuse that I was receiving. Yeah. And that's what I was saying in the beginning, the innocence being, snatched away, the stay in a child's place. You don't know nothing. So I remember going to school to music. My dad spoke about corporal punishment when he grew up. He was a musician. If you played the wrong scale, you got your ass beat in front of the whole class. Oh, so for him, that was what he was kind of like, he was trying to do that same thing with me. So even when I came to school with all these other white kids who had been in music theory and all these other things that were so, much more advanced than I was, but I was even intimidated. It's almost like it was the imposter syndrome. I didn't feel like I deserved to be there. Mind you, I was one of the most, and still am one of the most talented people in that class. I'm the only one who's successful in my field. But in that, while I was there, I remember being in class and they would say, what's this interval? And I would know it, but I'm like, I'm going to be wrong. I can't say it. I don't want to be embarrassed. I'm the only Black girl. I can't be wrong. Like this pressure, like, it's also so what if I was fucking wrong? You know, that's the whole point of being in school and learning. But I feel like a lot of Black kids have been stripped from it being okay to be wrong, because it's either like, you better know that shit or you don't say nothing at all, instead of, you know, falling down and getting back up and understanding that it's okay if I don't know that interval, but I'm in this class with this teacher, PhD, for him to tell me a better way to know what this interval is. So now that I'm not scarred, but I kept thinking about, if Samuel has 5 apples, I'm equating that same moment to this interval, and I'm thinking like, there's no way I can remember it, you know? And so it's just, it can really do a thing on you, and you won't even know it until now you all of a sudden 30 something years old, and you're like, oh my God.
That's why I do that.
Is what's happening. That's why I had anxiety every time I had that music theory class. I never had anxiety for any of my other classes when it was time to perform or sing or whatever. But when it was like ding ding on the piano and he would say, what's this note, or what's this, or you ear training, I would be like, oh hell, I'm in the class just freaking out, sweating, passing out, you know?
Yeah.
So, a lot.
Yeah, baby. Whew. I'm glad you're doing the work. I'm glad you're doing the work, because that's a lot to live with.
Also, I'd like to say, talk your shit, because you are the most talented from the team. So
Thanks. I heard that little, and I'm the only one in my field that's
going. But I was like, I want to just circle back to that, because you out here doing your thing. And I think, honestly, you named a lot of, I think it'd be helpful for us to talk to our listeners a bit about, like, what are some of the signs? Like, how do you identify when you're experiencing some of these inner child wounds? And I think in many ways you talked through some of the, like, there might be physical manifestations, like you're having, like, you're sweating, you're anxious, heart palpitations, palms, like there's something that's happening within you that you can't quite explain and get out. And I think, honestly, that resonated so much with me, because I think a lot about when I'm experiencing something in my, you know, my own therapeutic journey, my own personal life journey, when I've encountered something that I'm like, I actually don't have the language.
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the, like, how I've identified dealing with an inner child wound is like, I have an immense sense of confusion.
Okay.
That, like, I'm like, what is this? And I think for me, because I'm super analytical, my brain naturally begins to make connections between things. But I think some of you, Dan, like, very, you know, my upbringing, my parents are bomb. Like, I'm like, I know there are things that happened. Like, I know there are things that I just don't remember some of them. But I've had experiences in, whether it's like personal relationships, in my parenting with my son, where he'll do something and I'll have a very visceral reaction. And I'm like, where did that just come from? Yeah. Like, let me sit down with that before I react to that. And, like, respond to my son, or, you know, say something out loud, or just give myself the space. And I think, and sometimes for me, it's like, I have the physical manifestations, like, I just feel really uncomfortable, like, and I don't know what it is. But then for me, it's also coupled with, like, I do a lot of internal questioning of, like, where is this coming from? Why am I feeling this way? Like, I have no recollection of why this should bother me, but this is really bothering me. Yeah.
No, for sure. So let's kind of talk through a very common childhood experience in Black families. And we can kind of, like, pinpoint some of this stuff. So I don't know about y'all. I used to get whoopings. I used to get spankings. Did y'all get spanked? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take getting a spanking, right? And I know all of our parents, we all know each other, right? We grew up together. So I don't know about y'all, but when I would get spankings and I would cry, the first thing that my parent would say is what?
You better not cry.
Or what?
Stop.
I'm gonna give you something to cry about.
I'm gonna give you something to cry about, right?
AKA, I'm gonna make it harder.
Exactly. You better not cry, or I'm gonna give you something to cry about. So, first things first, we probably were doing things we had no business doing. Okay, so that's that. I stayed doing shit I ain't had no business doing. But there were also times that I got spankings for things that I didn't do. Guilty by association, because Victor and Xavier was always into some shit too, right? So when you think about when you're getting a spanking, what kind of feelings, put yourself back in, like, 9, 10-year-old, right? What feelings come up for you when you are getting a spanking?
For sure, fear.
Fear, yep.
Confusion. Also, like, a sense of, like, uncertainty of, like, so what's actually next? Like,
yeah.
When are they going to be done? Are they going to be done?
Anticipation.
Is somebody going to, yeah, that's the word. There it is.
Yeah.
Like anxiety / anticipation would be that, I think, my top three, like feelings associated with it.
How about you, Danny?
I would have to wait for mine. So I definitely felt the anxiety because it would be like when I get home. So I'm like, when I hear the garage or like be sitting in a room, go upstairs and get my belt, lay down on the bed and wait for me. And so maybe it took one of them however long to get home. So I would say the pre-anxiety or anticipation of it, as well as feeling violated, because even then I remember being like, sometimes I remember connecting like, well, it wasn't, what I did wasn't that bad. I never did things that was that bad for you to like all of a sudden just be railing, you know, just like going off on me. What's wrong with you? You know, and like now I know that as an adult, but more so I remember feeling like violated and like I was shrinking in the presence of someone else. And being silenced essentially, because even if I said like, oh, that hurts, or you're hurting me, or, you know, be quiet, you know, I'm gonna make it worse. It's like a threat.
Oh, yeah, I heard that one.
I feel so the violation and the threat part, even though I didn't know those words then. So whatever the child words were, that would be, I remember feeling ashamed and embarrassed and violated by my parents for wanting to be that upset and mad at me and hurt me in this way.
Yeah. Yeah. So Emmy's got fear was one of hers, confusion, anxiety, anticipation. You're feeling violated, Danny. You're definitely feeling anxiety. I mean, I had one of my parents definitely was you gonna have this waiting on you when you get home, or just wait till I get home, or even worse, I'm gonna call your daddy. No, you call your daddy and let him know what you're doing and why you're gonna get a spanking. There ain't nothing worse than waiting on a spanking. Oh my God. Or whooping.
Nothing. That's like back in the day when they say like after school we gonna fight, and like in the wood in that movie, he's waiting the whole movie to go outside. And it's like, why are my parents doing the same shit?
Right.
Movie.
Exactly. So the point that I'm trying to show you here is that from a very young age, we were taught in certain circumstances that it was not safe to express emotion, not safe to show that you were afraid, not safe to show that you were in pain, not safe to show that you were embarrassed, not safe to show that you were sad, not safe to show. Think about the times, Amy, you were saying, well, something I did or something my brother did. Think about the times where you were not safe to speak up and advocate for yourself. Well, hold up, that's damn, I ain't do that. Like, well, why am I getting spanking? It's not safe. So we take that from childhood. Fast forward, now we're 3 grown-ass women, and times where we might feel like speaking up, we're silenced. Times where we feel afraid, we've been taught, suck it up. This is happening. Times where we have felt unheard. A lot of this stuff definitely stems from the way that we were raised, our childhood. And this is just a very basic example of how inner child wounds start. There are so many, so many more, right? Like that's just a very common, most of us got spankings. Most of us were doing shit we had no business doing. But like Danny said, not to the extent that it warranted some of these. I mean, my nickname growing up was Barney, but y'all know I'm a little melanin challenged. I'm lightly melanated. My nickname was Barney, but for a reason. Like I would literally bruise. And so it's crazy that now as an adult, right, you know, like, hold up, y'all like, why ain't nobody call CPS? Now, granted, like I'm not sitting here to say like, you know, my parents abused me. I don't feel like I was physically abused as a child. Let the record state that. But I do think that there were times where maybe my father was frustrated or my mother was going through something, and that all compiled onto this spanking that I got as a result. And then me talking back and having something to say like, oh, this hurts, or I didn't do it, or what's this for, is just adding to their frustration. And then them wails get harder and harder and harder.
I mean, we could have a whole nother episode on this, just in the, you know, where it comes from. The fact that that's what many of us know as Black people coming from slavery. You do something wrong or you don't do something, you get in your ass beat, you know?
Yeah.
And just that going through the generations, which, you know, people say all they want to about millennials, but I love that millennials started to begin to question things more and to decide that, well, maybe if I just talk to my child, maybe if I use just sitting down and discussing them, maybe they can understand why they did this. Maybe I can take something away. I'm not saying that I don't know every child, whatever. I don't have any kids yet. I know you do, but I've seen you with Gavin when he has been super frustrated and you said, why are you doing this? Listen to me, sit down, let's take a breather, let's whatever, listen to me. And I've seen him be able to redirect his behavior. So you can't tell me that a toddler is not able to, or you can't tell me that beating them is a better option when they don't even understand why they're being, whatever. And now they're grown-ups. And now these grown men are now flinching, thinking, this woman that they're dating is about to hit them because they were getting beat their whole life, which is, again, inner child wounds showing up.
Or we're told boys don't cry. Be a big boy. Big boys don't cry.
Oh,
dry it up. Big boys don't cry.
Hate when people tell Gavin that. I think one thing also is that you highlighted, Sid, is like also like what the parent is going through becomes a big part of that, which I think is almost like the generational inner child wounds.
Ooh, yeah.
Of like, you did not learn how to deal with the stresses in your life, and likely somebody in your life released their stress via being frustrated with you. Because I've caught myself a couple times, like a long, hard day at work, and Gavin comes home and my patience is like paper thin, paper. And in many ways, like he can feel the energy. Where he like, I think sometimes he like can like sense my shoulders are up, and he's like, "Let me not spill nothing today." When in
she
reality,
gonna go off.
Because even if he does, like I'll still be like, generally, I'm like, it's okay, it's cool. But like sometimes even the energy, like I've seen him sometimes like spill something and try to hide it. I'm like, why are you hiding that? He's looking at me like, are you okay? And I'm looking at him like, are you okay?
Are you okay?
And then I catch myself like, what energy am I bringing right now? Like, is my energy like filling this space with tension? That's unnecessary. And so like, in what way have we thought about what are the strategies? Because I know like my parents used to work crazy hours. And I think for me, like, I'm sure the whoopings, my dad says I used to get them all the time. I'd be like, whatever, I don't remember. I might have just blocked them out. I don't know. Yeah. But I think in some situations, like the things that I do remember as like consternation were always like in the evening after work.
Oh yeah.
When it's like my mom's been in court all day, worked a long, crazy day. And not that she like put hands on us, but it's like just her temperament for like, when my brother's like, why can't we have fried chicken? She's like, why don't you make the fried chicken? Like I've been on my feet today, right? And I think sometimes it's like their inability to unpack the stress.
Yeah.
Further compounds like our inability to be able to understand how you unpack stress. And I think that can sometimes create those generational, like you're being short and you're not taking the time to figure out why. Or you're being inflexible and not taking the time to figure out why. And I know for me personally, I've experienced that. And, Gavin went 3.5. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I got to catch myself. Or like, oh, I got to make sure I give myself like close the laptop at least 15 minutes to not do that before he comes home, or like go outside and go for a walk and just decompress, because the transfer of energy is so real.
I was going to say, I love watching you parent, Emily, because there are times where like we can be on FaceTime and something Gavin might be doing in the background, I know would be like, shut up! Like I would be the person to be like, put that down. Like I was over there visiting one time and Gavin was throwing, I shit y'all not, a weighted 10-pound ball at my feet. Like this man was chasing me, throwing this weighted ball.
It's like 3 pounds. You're not about to... He's strong, but it ain't no 10-pound. But my child, please know everybody, my child does not play with weighted balls in the house that could potentially have
this
him.
This man was strong as hell, throwing this weighted ball around with his biceps. But no, like just in general, just watching you parent, you are so patient. If you're having a hard day and your patience is paper thin, like you do a great job of like taking a deep breath and then responding. Because I never see it, but that just goes back. You mentioned like your parents worked a lot and your mom was in court all day. And that reminds me like, my parents were very busy as well. Mom was working for state government, raising 5 kids because we had my 2 cousins. Yeah. My dad being in the radio, on the radio, I guess I should say, and then having like other things, remotes and concerts and all this stuff. Especially like generationally, I think fathers become kind of inundated in this provider role, right? So
Mm.
like their job is to provide. And so I grew up having a 2-parent household, but sometimes it functioned as a single parent household because while dad was out bringing home the bread and making sure that we were comfortable and lived a nice house, we got a nice house. It was comfortable for everyone.
Y'all
But
always eat snacks.
we always had snacks. Emmy used to come over in the morning, y'all, on the way to school. Sometimes she would say good morning. Sometimes she'd go straight to the fridge. What y'all got to eat? Breakfast. My mama always had them good muffins from Sam's.
Good blueberry muffins.
Them good blueberry muffins from Sam's.
Yes.
With the to-go. She used to have the Tropicana juices, the little individual joints. I mean, we was fed. We had all the snacks. But when you have 5 kids in the house, you don't really have no choice.
Have to.
Okay. So
and when I was the youngest, my mom was done buying snacks. So I was like, let me go over to Sid's house because at least they got some snacks. My mom talking about take a salad.
It means to roll up in that on that bicycle. But no, like just this concept of emotional availability is what I was getting at. Emily, like I watch you parent and you are so emotionally intelligent that you have the awareness enough to say like, it's been a day. The job is being real ghetto. I'm frustrated. I'm irritated. And my son needs me to show up in a way that does not reflect the day I've had. Mm-hmm. And I think you really do a good job of being emotionally available to him, which is going to, in turn, as an adult, reflect, right? Like he will be able to love someone with emotional availability. Whereas our parents, I think, although they were doing what they knew to be the best that they could as a provider, as a nurturer, sometimes they fell a little bit short in the emotional availability piece. So like one thing I'll say, an example, y'all know my dad being in radio does, he's like that dude, right? You all see all these little plaques and whatnot behind me. He's really good at what he does. And again, always provided, always brought home the bacon, always made sure we had what we needed and some, and wasn't always around, wasn't always at the basketball games, wasn't always on family vacations. I remember my mom used to drive us in a conversion van from Raleigh, North Carolina to Birmingham, Alabama every summer with 5 kids in tow by herself. By herself. Think about that. It's hard enough to drive yourself from here to there. But 5 kids, all of us under the age of 10. I think Lauren might have been 11. But all of us under the age of 10 or 11. You got toddlers. You got 5, 6, 7. I mean, it was a lot. And so, although I know my mom was doing the best that she could, sometimes she wasn't emotionally available. And we're gonna talk about kind of what happens next in some later episodes, because that I think 100% informs my attachment style. We're gonna talk about attachments later on, but it's lended itself to like how I attach myself to others, and this feeling of like not wanting to need anything from anybody and being self-sufficient is 100% connected to my parents' emotional availability growing up. So
it's heavy. It's so many layers to all of it. I love what you brought about generational trauma, because that's essentially what this all is. And so, I mean, we hope that this episode allows us to break generational traumas and curses and all that. So let's talk about how to get started with the work on the healing journey. I know for me personally, I started doing a lot of mirror work, because now it's like I've identified a lot of the trauma and the triggers and the inner child wounds. And I kind of for a long time also allowed it to control me and to place the blame, because it's always like, my daddy did this and my mom and my sister, or this moment or this. And it's like, I no longer wanted that to have control over me. So now it began to like, how do I love myself through these things that I maybe don't like about myself, that I don't like how they've manifested in my relationships? Because a lot of my trauma, my inner child wounds, most of them have shown up in me romantically dating. It's less about my friendships or shows or my work that I do, but all in my intimate romantic relationships where they're able to shine this light on some of the really ugly, beautiful parts, but the ugly parts. And I'm like, how do I fix these things? And so for me, it's the mirror work. It's looking at myself and being uncomfortable and being like, well, do I love myself? And what do I love about myself? And not attaching all the things that I love about myself to what I do for other people, but genuinely, what do I love about Danielle? You know, so I would love to hear from both of you all how, what are tips, ways, how to get started, Sid, in the healing journey.
So definitely, I think you hit the nail on the head, being able to identify how it shows up for you. I'm like you, Danny. A lot of my inner child stuff shows up in relationships. It has taught me that I don't need to depend on nobody. I got me. Like, people are going to let me down. I got me. I'm never going to let myself down. So I just rather not need anybody. Or a lot of times people struggle with vulnerability. So I think the first part is recognizing like how it shows up for you. Some very common ones are, again, feeling like you are a people pleaser. You have trouble saying no. You have trouble prioritizing yourself. If you are tired and really don't want to do something, your friends say, hey girl, let's go out. Or, hey, can you do this for me? And you choose to say yes when really you want to say no. That's a people pleasing behavior. So me as a therapist, I want to investigate that. I want to know, like, when did that first start becoming a thing for you? Maybe if you were a child that wasn't allowed to explore and to play and have fun and to just, be spontaneous as a child, learning to identify, in your adult life, even outside of relationships. Maybe it shows up in work and as a perfectionist. Maybe it shows up, you just don't want to feel, affectionate. You don't like to hug, kiss, whatever it is. These are all different ways that it can manifest. And so, again, identifying kind of how it comes from. And then, I'm always going to be a proponent for therapy, baby. Always. This wouldn't be the same podcast if every chance I got, I wasn't like, go to therapy. Therapy's lit.
It really is.
It really is. Go ahead, Em.
That's honestly, I was about to be like 3 words, therapy, because I think for me personally, and many of the things that I've dealt with, where I've struggled is like figuring out the right questions to ask to get the juices flowing and start conversations with myself. Mm-hmm. And it's really helpful to have somebody disassociated from all the stuff, to just be able to ask real questions and help you get down that pathway of, tell me about a time when. Okay, remember an earlier time when. What are the connections between those two times? Let's talk about some themes that are coming up in our conversations. And sometimes when you're so deeply steeped in it, it's hard to take a step back and think about like, oh, snap, all this stuff is really connected.
You can't even see it.
And like when you right up in it, right? Like when you're in the eye of the storm, it's calm. Yeah. But all around you, you got cows, fences from the farm, somebody's Toyota Camry is just swirling, and you don't even recognize it because you're in the eye of this tornado. And I think having somebody who's able to kind of like pull you up and be like, let's talk about the storm. Let's talk about what caused the storm. And let's talk about the ways in which we can help you be safe in the storm, because the storm's not necessarily going to stop. But how do you navigate while it's still swirling around you?
I like that analogy.
To an extent, you can use that if you want to.
Stealing it. Yep, stealing it.
But I think to an extent, it's when and I think a lot of it is about like getting started on it is working to build your toolkit. But what are the things that you have in your back pocket that when you're feeling anxious, you're able to go in and say, I had, whether it's counting, it's feeling something, it's one of them little pop ball things that the kids all have at school now. And I swear none of them are paying any attention in class. Like, there are strategies. And I think getting started is being able to open those conversations and build that toolkit so that when if something happens in your life, you're approached with a situation that you're not sure how to navigate, you at least have some foundational tools and a support, whether it's a therapist. Strongly recommend a therapist, but also get some real ass friends, like real friends that aren't just going to be there for like the turn ups, but friends who are also going to be there for the hard times.
The turn up and the church.
Exactly. Right. Friends who are going to call you on your shit, whether it's about that relationship you're in with that trifling person, or it's about, I see you making yourself small at work, how you've been in the same type of role for XYZ period of time and you're not stretching yourself, but you keep talking about wanting to stretch yourself. But you're not doing this. Let me hold you accountable. Like for me, I think that's like, for me, I say that if I had to pick 3 foundational pieces, it's like, go find somebody professionally that can help you, be persistent in building your toolkit, and then build a network of accountability partners that can help you navigate this stuff, because the storm's not going to stop swirling. But I think a lot of it is about perception. If you feel like you are topsy-turvy and everything is uncontrollable around you, that's going to continue. If you feel like you have the ability to slow the storm down, and it's almost like, I feel like I've seen this in many movies where it's like things are crazy, but then like the main character has the ability to be like, and it's like things are frozen in the air. So you can be like, let me grab this thing.
Like Hamilton.
There we go. That's perfect. Example. But if you can somehow harness the ability to slow down the storm, find your own calm in the storm, I think that's so powerful. But it also takes a lot of work, which is why you go back to like find that professional that can help you build that skill. Because if you can't slow down the noise, in many situations, you're just gonna keep running from it, and you're not going to address the stuff going on and continue to be like the cyclical. Because a lot of the stuff is like the trauma is cyclical.
Ooh, baby, yes, it is. You'll notice that that same theme will show up in different areas.
And once you put a name to it, it's gonna be driving you crazy. It's almost like how like when you like buy a car, you're like, oh, I can't wait to drive. Yeah, for me, like my RAV4, I love to drive my little car. And it took me a week in the city to be like, does everyone own a RAV4?
You start seeing it everywhere, huh?
Everyone owns a RAV4. Every taxi driver owns a RAV4. Every person, if they don't own like a Toyota Camry, they own a RAV4. And once you've identified it and your perception is open, you see it everywhere. And then it's like it's unavoidable to do the work because it's like, dang, I really won't have this direct conversation with this person. I'm gonna just let it slide. Then it comes up in another manifestation. You'd be like, ooh, something's really telling me I got to be direct with them, but it's just uncomfortable. And then it comes up again and comes up again. And ultimately it's going to start rearing its head, and you got to make a choice to deal with it or not.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think for those that can't necessarily get to therapy right away, or maybe even still on the fence about it, journaling also, being able to like write down, I'm feeling, these visceral feelings that you spoke about, Emily, earlier, just even saying like, today is August 30th and I am so confused. I'm confused because I got off the phone with so-and-so or whatever it is. And then you can begin to kind of go back yourself and read that. I know for me, I've kept a lot of the journals from when I was on tour and stuff. And I go back and it doesn't even sound like Danielle. It sounds like, what the hell? But again, I was in the middle. I was in the storm. I couldn't see it at the time. So just, therapy, yes, all three of us are strong advocates for it, but there's also some moments before, and also no one else can do it for you. I think for me, I have often waited for someone to come and save me. And no one is going to come and save you. Yes, there'll be great friends. Yes, there's sermons and there's scriptures that provide comfort, and your parents and whatever else you have, some people have things to rely on, but you really have to like save yourself. There's a bunch of resources and tools around you perhaps, but stepping out on faith and believing that there is more for you, that there's more abundance in your life, and you have to go and grab it. You have to be unapologetic about becoming the person that you want to be, and that you don't have to be. Your abuse and your pain and your trauma does not identify. That doesn't describe who you are. You don't have to be those things. You can be something else. You don't have to be the rape victim. You don't have to be the person who is a drug addict. You don't have to be the people pleaser. You can be whatever you want to be. But it is the work that you have to put into yourself. The same way you'll do 10 interviews for a job, you might have to sit with yourself and do 10 to 15 to 20 interviews on yourself to figure out the why and get to that better place. I just want to encourage people who are listening that there is an after, just because you're in the meantime right now and it's uncomfortable. And I'm speaking because I'm still in that place. Yeah. I am so uncomfortable. I have days where I'm like, I don't want to get out of the bed. I have so many days where I do allow the things that have happened to me to define me and to control me, and for me to think, well, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, or I've dimmed my life, for other people. And now it's just like, but I want more, and more is waiting for me. That's why I'm so uncomfortable, Yeah. And so it's now stepping out on faith and answering the tough questions and having this type of conversation, or calling my friends and say, have I ever communicated with you in a weird way? Or what are some of the things about me that you think I could change? Or, those are just all things that we could all benefit from. So yeah, I just want to encourage all of our listeners that there is more for you after this.
I love that.
Annie, you are preaching. And as you were talking, it took me back to one of my favorite episodes we've recorded with the good Reverend. I gotta get my title right.
Sammy Dow.
But Sammy Dow, where you are may not be your fault, but it is your fight.
I say that all the time. That was like the best nugget of the season.
Girl, woo. If that
I
ain't
be saying that to my clients, yeah. Thank you.
If that ain't a word, you may not have driven yourself to this point, but here you are in the middle of the road. And
in the middle.
What are you gonna do?
Brakes don't work or nothing.
Oh no.
You at a gas.
I ain't just flying.
You ain't got no insurance. Just
you just out here. You just out here. I think I love this notion of like you can start over. You can be who you want to be. You don't have to keep the label that you were maybe given at whatever point in your life just by association of who you were born into, right? Or what you were born into. You can be whoever you want to be. I think that part of the work too, so like being able to identify the feeling, right? That's something that a lot of people, it's such a simple task, but a lot of people really struggle with, what am I feeling exactly? Right? Y'all know one of my pet peeves is I feel some kind of way. No. Some kind of way is not a feeling. Like, what do you feel? What do you feel? Do you feel embarrassed? Do you feel hurt? Do you feel ashamed? Do you feel inadequate? What do you feel? And I think if you can, I've said this before, if you can name it, you can tame it. If you can name what you feel, and going back to what Danny said, write that down. On today, August 30th, I feel confused. If you can name that and you can journal about what happened today, then the next time you feel confused, you can then connect the dot that says, you know what, every time I feel confused, I'm thinking about this, or I'm experiencing that, or I'm dealing with this person. This person leads me to feeling confused. Or I notice that this is a feeling that I kind of sit with a lot. Why is that, and where is that coming from? So identifying the feeling is a big one for me. And then the second part is when you identify that feeling and you can connect that to an inner child wound, simply asking yourself, like, what do you need? What do you need? That's such a underrated question. We're conditioned as humans, put out. And Danny, you actually taught me the power of rest. Like, there have been so many times, y'all, and we haven't talked about all of it, but Danny has sat me down. Like, you need to sit down and just take pause. Like, we don't have to do this today. You don't have to record this today. You don't have to write this today. So taking the time to ask yourself, what do you need? There was a lot of times last season, like I told you, I was navigating some grief and loss. I needed rest. Sometimes we need to feel heard, or we need to feel seen, or we need to express our emotions. So asking yourself, what do I need, is a good question to give that inner child what they're crying out for. Because when that need is not met, baby, humans subconsciously will find a way to meet that need, whether it is in a healthy way or an unhealthy way. So that's my 2 cents on that. Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
this was
good.
Woo.
I feel good about it. Yeah.
Good to be back with y'all, man. I just appreciate. Appreciate y'all so much. I mean, look, we've got some dope stuff coming for season 3, but we can't close out an episode. Like, I feel like we've unpacked so much in just this short time, and we hope to all of our listeners that we have left you with a couple nuggets to get you thinking about your inner child, to get you thinking about what are some of the things that I might be avoiding, some of the things that I need some support with unpacking, and that you hopefully go find those resources that you need and find that circle of friends around you that can help you navigate it and get to where you ideally want to be, whether it's your, professionally, personally, mental health wise, all of the above. But we can't close out an episode though without doing a little bit of rapid fire.
Rapid fire.
Yeah. I've missed the rapid fires.
You can't just leave without doing a little rapid fire. So the first one that I got for you guys, what is your favorite book from your childhood? We're going to take it back the whole time today. What's your favorite book?
Be Yourself, Daisy.
I've never heard of that. Be Yourself, Daisy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It was a book about being yourself. My mom always shoved it to me whenever I was trying to be something other than Danielle.
Come on, Mama.
Mine was I Love You Forever.
These I don't remember that. Like sentimental, sweet books. My God, mine was Encyclopedia Brown.
It's a story of like this woman who has a baby, and then over time, like the baby grows up. And so she tells a story about it. But then ultimately at the end of each like age period, it's like, I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. And that's kind of the cadence. And
So sweet.
it turns into like the son taking care of his elderly mother. And then he starts doing that. He starts saying that same little poem to his daughter. It's so cute.
That is very sweet.
I bought it for Gavin and he still is like, I don't like that book. I'm like, wow, that hurts.
He'll get there. Worth it.
So my favorite series as a kid to read was Encyclopedia Brown. I think I was always just a little Sherlock Holmes, wanted to figure some shit out. And I had the whole series. Like there were like 20 books. I had them all.
So you're 10 years old and you're getting on your mom's nerves. So she sends you outside. What game are you about to play? Y'all know mine.
Amy, you playing how to go get it?
No, we was hooping, bro.
Okay.
Fuck it. I was like, it's cool. I wanted to go outside anyway. Bye.
Me, Victor, and Xavier are either playing a neighborhood-wide version of hide and seek, which took forever because the neighborhood.
Too many woods in your neighborhood.
Yeah, the lie. You know, it's hella woods around my house. Or we used to play red light, green light, where you could take like 2 steps. And then I used to love being in charge of that game. Like, no, stop. You cheated. Go back.
I was a ride bikes in Maryland, the neighborhood with all the kids. We just be riding through and we'd go through the hidden trails and all that. But I just wasn't that way anymore. It's so funny because I was such an outdoors kid in Maryland. And once I moved to North Carolina, I was like, But yeah, ride bikes in the neighborhood.
Did you ever used to put a playing card on your bike?
Don't you send them about them goddamn playing cards?
I used to love putting a playing card on my bike. Make it sound like a little motorcycle.
No, I never did that.
Really? Oh yeah, girl. Put it on there with a little piece of tape. It would be like.
Now you got to use like the clip. My dad used to be pissed. We ruined many a deck of his good cards. All jacked up. That joint
tattered and torn.
Edge is done. All right. So we've broached elementary school. Okay. We getting a little older. Who was your first crush?
Brandon McGuire.
Danny Reddy. I'm like, ooh.
Oh, Brandon McGuire.
Mine was Ricky Papillo, this fine little Italian boy from 5th grade.
Period.
Mine was Carlos Rincon.
Okay, Carlos.
His little Puerto Rican papi. Carlos. Listen, this is the same man that put condoms in my locker in the 6th grade, made me cry in front of everybody. I was like, condoms! Clutches, pearls, passes away in the middle of the hallway. Like, no. I was such a little goody two shoes. When I opened that locker, them condoms fell out, child. You would have thought
you was gonna pass out.
You would have thought I was about to get jumped or something. I mean, it was terrible. I went home early that day. I called my mom crying. I mean, I could not face it. So embarrassed. Everybody was like, "Oh, she having sex?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not even kissed a boy yet." Mom, come get me.
All right, so the trauma of middle school is real. It's so real. But of course, you blossom in high school, and we all got stories. But you're a senior in high school, and you're in trouble. What was it for?
Curfew. I never abided by curfew, and I didn't care because I was like, "What's she gonna do? Hit me?" I'm like, "I'm grown now," or "What's she gonna do? Take my phone away?" Okay.
Then you woke up and chose violence every day.
I'm like, I would walk in the house and be like this. You can take my little whatever,
my little flip phone.
I'm all about experiences. Yeah, I wanted to experience this. So I would rather be like, I would be rushing back in my little 99 Toyota Corolla, but it would be worth it for me to have that extra moment. You know how we grew up, we really had fun. It was like a freshman year of college, our senior year, or, even when you guys were seniors and I was a junior or a sophomore. So anyway, curfew breaking.
Yeah, I think mine was pretty similar, like curfew breaking / lying, where it's like, where are you about to be at? Well, I was at Lori's house.
I knew it.
Her mother called me and said that y'all were here. And so that means y'all were in neither place. I was like, dang, I guess they do pay attention a little bit.
didn't think that through.
Mine was, I got in trouble a lot for running my mouth in class. Like
Not in class.
oh
Senior
nah,
year?
in class, in the middle of class. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I was born to be a social worker, straight up. Like I was the advocate. I remember sitting in Barley Maloney's class and it was separated. And there was all the black kids on one side, all the white kids on another side. And I asked Barley Maloney, like, yo, what's up with this, coach? Like, why you got all the black people on one side and all the white people on another side? And why am I with the white people? Why? I need answers. I'm advocating, right? And I was like, I literally said, like, this is Jim Crow. Look at this. You got us segregated up in here. And Barley Maloney was like, that's it. Get out of my class. You always got something smart to say. Get out. And I was like, all right, that's fine. I'm leaving. But just know I'm calling my mama before you do, because it always made it better if you could call your parents first. Like, listen, Barley Maloney kicked me out of class, but I'm going to tell you why. Well, as it turns out, it was an AP class and all the AP students were on one side. I was the only AP student of color. And all the non-AP students were on the other side.
It wasn't fully an AP class.
It was weird. There was like not enough teachers. So half the class was taught AP and half the class was not. And while the AP kids were learning, the non-AP kids were doing work. And while the AP, it was like weird, yeah. But not enough teachers,
but
half AP.
You know, they should explain those things up front because we're not stupid.
You know, because I'm trying to figure out why all the black kids are sitting across from me. And why I can't go over there.
Facts.
Why I can't
My
go
friend.
over
there. So much from our childhood, and can't wait to unpack more with you ladies as we are getting season 3 off the ground. It's exciting time.
What a great first episode to come back. I feel like I need to write some things down. My therapy is tomorrow. So I'm like,
Girl,
I done triggered myself a little bit bringing some shit up today.
Okay.
we about to go deep in season 3, but ultimately, to all of our listeners, we thank you so much, as always, for tuning in with us for another daily dose of dopamine. We are so excited to be back and in action for season 3, and we have a dope-ass season planned out, and it's all about healing.
That's right. Whether this is your first time listening to us today and you really just love this episode, or if you've been riding with us since season 1, just know we see you and we love you for being here with us and sharing this space with us week after week.
And as always, go ahead and share with a friend who's going to share with a friend who's going to share with a friend.
Right. And if you're not already, go ahead and make sure you're following us on Instagram at Daily Dose Dopamine Podcast. There is where you will find all the clips of our episodes, as well as the hilarious behind the scenes footage with the 3 of us, but mostly Danny cutting up and Sid's terrible Wi-Fi.
I'm doing better with the Wi-Fi, I feel, this
I guess.
time around. I'm trying. But no, really, all are welcome here. We welcome you. There is really and truly something for everyone. As long as you are bringing good energy, we don't want any musty ass energy up in here.
So again, we hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we'll see you right back here next week for your daily dose of dopamine. Peace.
Peace out.
Your head to the sky.